Hi, and welcome back to Harmonic Hands. And today we're going to learn about the F sharp or G flat major scale. I'm going to start with my right hand. We have a pivot turn between 4 and 1, and then another pivot turn between 3 and 1, and a crossover between 1 and 3 and 1 and 4 on the way down. Now remember, with right hand, our pivot turns are on the way up. We're going to start on finger number 2. We have 3 black notes, followed by a white note, followed by 2 black notes, a white note, and a black note. And I'll do it one more time. To take a look at the F sharp or G flat major scale in left hand. We're going to start on a finger 4, and remember, when we're working on left hand scales, we have crossovers on the way up and pivots on the way down. So we're going to have our first crossover between fingers 1 and 3, and our second crossover between fingers 1 and 4. And on the way down, we have a pivot between 4 and 1 and between 3 and 1. Now sometimes you'll have students who don't necessarily want to start and end on the same fingers, particularly with this scale in left hand. So you're really just going to have to stress upon them, especially when they're just learning their first octave, that in order to be able to play a scale beyond 1 octave, they're going to have to start and end on the same finger. And if they're saying they're having a hard time with it, at that point, it's time to adjust what you're doing with them technically and maybe open up that elbow a little bit more, relax the knuckles. So sometimes there's always an underlying technical reason as to why a student might be struggling with something. Now make sure that when they're sending their arm into the side of finger 4, either side of finger 4, but it's going squarely into the middle to top part of that pad. And the arm's in line with, no matter what angle the finger's playing at on the key's surface, the arm and wrist is always in alignment. So we're going to start with a nice towards the window. And you can always just kind of open the palm. You can open the palm a few times, whatever you need to do. You can take the arm, do that, kind of rotate back and forth. It's opening and then closing and shoving it in. Land, open the door, and close the door. Open the door, shove it in, swivel on over. I know my fingers right now, these two, are coming over, but that's only because they're following. If I was just going to kind of turn my palm over, they're just following what the arm is telling them to do. Notice also, when I start here, I'm not anticipating playing the other 2 black notes by starting like this. And students sometimes they'll want to, if they're in a 5-finger position, or they're playing single notes that are like this, they'll want to start out making sure that all the fingers are touching the notes. We don't need to worry about all the notes that we're going to play. We only need to worry about the note that we are playing, is what I like to tell them. So start my finger 4, and my arm is going to get my finger 3 where it needs to be. Notice also that my finger 4 and finger 5, they're just following right along, and then so is my finger 3. I'm letting my fingers and my arm be so relaxed that all they need to do is fingers preemptively like this. I'm letting them be in their natural position, the way they want to be. I'm not forcing them to do anything. And those fingers are just following along. This kind of goes into why I don't like to start students, especially beginners, on the black keys, because it feels like you're sitting on top of a cliff instead of kind of sitting on top of the land. And they will want to kind of find that stability by pressing or flattening the fingers, or the opposite, having stick fingers. So this is, getting a student onto the black keys and playing black key scales and chords. We have to be so especially careful that every single finger is being paid attention to, and that we're only worrying about the note that is in front of us. We're not worrying about any of the other notes. We're not worrying about where our fingers need to be. We're only worried about what is directly in front of us in the moment, and that is one finger at a time. If they're not comfortable with having the arm cross the body, then start them down an octave, for instance. Or if they're not comfortable with a whole step pivot, take it back to the half step. Or if they're just having trouble not pressing on the black keys, do a white note to black note comparison. Because at the end of the day, these two things, playing down here or playing up here, should feel exactly the same. So you can do comparisons. You can always do the rocking trick to kind of get that pivot feeling a little bit more comfortable. You can always play on top of the lid, but there are ways where we can help our students feel more comfortable with these concepts. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.